afternoon, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us on this glorious day, sitting in this room amongst this glorious work. My name is Marnie Brokenshire. I am not an artist. I am Sarah's friend. We have been friends for quite some time, and it is my absolute honour to interview her and see if we can't get from her some of the jewels of wisdom and brilliance that brings to life what we see on the walls around us. So congratulations, Sarah, on this incredible exhibition.
Thank you, Marnie.
It's
Thank you.
amazing.
And I just would like to say that I know that you're probably expecting Greta Launty, my beautiful friend and fellow South Australian artist, to be sitting in this chair, and sadly she's really unwell, and this morning has hardly any voice. And so, Marnie, I can't thank you enough, because we've really had to flip things on our head this morning, and Marnie just said yes. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's a good friend. Well, I'm so grateful. And Greta, if you're watching from home, mwah, I love you.
We hope you get better soon. It is my pleasure. I'm going to bring a different perspective, I suspect, than what Greta would bring, but hopefully it will be just as interesting, because everything Sarah does is interesting. I've never really had a friend that can talk about trees and light in the way Sarah can talk about it, and it has certainly been, not coming from an artist's background, one of the most joyous things about her is to see the world through, for me to see the world through an artist's eyes. So hopefully that's what we will be able to share today. So let's go back to the beginning. I know it's been some time. Where did this all start?
Well, this very show, or
just
my very first
your
show?
journey as an artist, where did it all start? 27 years ago, right?
27 years ago, I had my first solo show in a commercial gallery. So that's probably the date that I say that I maybe thought of myself as a professional artist. And but before that, I was always painting and creating. And coming from a beautiful creative mother, my mum was a dressmaker, beautiful seamstress and needlework, and we were always around her making things. And I think she always encouraged us to be creative, and I was probably, out of the four of us, the one that just did that and gravitated to it. I cannot sew, so don't think that I can do that, because I cannot sew, because I always had a mother that made all of our clothes, and so she just did that. But I just discovered a love that I just loved to paint and draw, and she gave me my first box of 72 Derwent pencils on my 12th birthday. I'll never forget. I can still smell them. And when you lift out one tray of pencils and you put them up and you go, oh, there's more. It's like a lolly box. And everything, like all of those childhood memories of me drawing up in my bedroom, and that was just a happy time for me. And in terms, fast forwarding, school art was always my favourite subject, and I lived in the art room, and they let me just be there whenever I wanted to be there, and then encouraged me with my parents that I could go on and do some study in this field. And luckily I had parents that really did encourage me to follow what I wanted to do. They gave me the very wise, I suppose, guidance of doing a double degree, which was the visual arts subjects, but the Bachelor of Art and Design Education. So, and Mum said, you're always going to have a job if you're a teacher. Right. And it might sound like an old-fashioned thing, but she said you can travel and teach, have a family and teach, and paint and teach. And I tell you, I just feel so grateful for that advice that I got in Year 10 at our wonderful school, Mim. I'm looking at you, because anyone that went to our school and did art knows the art teachers there were just always just nurturing and encouraging us to follow the dream. And they basically said to Mum, look, you don't really have much choice. She's sort of decided what she would like to do, and so let's just help her get there. And look, historically now, from when I left uni, I lived in London for a couple of years, and I was teaching art over there and being able to travel to Europe in my holidays and paint, and it was just one of those wonderful things that I could actually do both. And I had the regular income from my teaching, and I was able to save and make paintings and, you know, pay for my materials and be able to build two careers side by side that went very much hand in hand, actually, and one fed into the other beautifully, and I'm still doing both, and I always have done both. Even when I was teaching, you know, full-time at the school here in Adelaide, I was making art at night and on the weekends, and so I never stopped painting and making art, because if I wasn't making art and I was teaching, I wasn't happy. I needed to do both. So it's a sort of a 27-year career on paper, but it's always been there.
And I love that the fallback plan, like the, you know, just in case, be a teacher, actually has been really intrinsic in also being a commercial artist.
Yeah.
That you've been able to bring the fallback plan into the sort of side-by-side career, which I think is amazing. So how have you grown and changed in this 27 years? We get here today and we see, and we'll talk a bit about the evolution of your technique and approach, but as a person,
I think to show your work, you have to be brave, and it's a daunting career in so many different ways. You're putting yourself up on the wall, and you know, it's your heart and soul right there for people to talk about or criticise, and it's so personal. So I've had to become probably braver, but I also think each time I make a show, I become more confident with my technique and my practice, and my people now look at my work and they know it's mine, and that takes a long time to develop your own style. And you know, technically, my palette knife work is what I'm quite known for, but each show varies in palette because of where I am. And so I've changed and evolved in sort of my techniques and things like that, but I think each show I do, I become more confident, and you have to believe in yourself too, and you have to believe. I paint because I love to paint, and I enjoy my job. I'm so lucky that I get to do it every day, but I put it up on the wall for an audience to look at, and I have to believe in my own work to be able to put it up on the wall in public. And if people don't like it, well, that's, you know, not everyone's going to like everything. I paint what I want to paint, and people enjoy my work and respond to it, but I've always had to stay really true to myself and be authentic with my practice and with the way in which I make the work, and each show has to be sort of better than the last, and I keep pushing, and I'm always pushing. I want to keep learning, and I learn every day. I learn in my studio by making mistakes and scraping a whole lot of paint off, and you know, having a hissy fit about it, and it's not easy. Some days it's easier than others, and some paintings just pour out of me, and I don't know how I did it, and I'm like, wow, that just felt like I just needed to get it out there. And then I have paintings that I battle with for months, and they're often my best work because of that push and pull that and the constant chat in my head about, you know, there's a lot of chat that goes on in an artist's head about self-doubt and that imposter syndrome that we always talk about. But so being true, being authentic, and believing in myself, and just keeping working really hard. I've just learnt that about myself as well, that I work really hard, and it always it always pays off. Yeah. I don't know whether that answered the question, but
I think it does. I think my takeout from that is just that importance of self-worth, and you are risking so much when you're, putting the heart and soul on the wall for other people to judge. I can't even imagine how difficult that would be. I'm going to come back in a minute to the idea of scraping the paint off, because we talked about that yesterday, and I find it staggering. But before we do, tell me how you participate in a lot of artist residences and trips away. Talk to me about why that's important for you, and what the impact on your practice is with those that type of approach.
Yeah, that's that's a really good question, because it is a very big part of my practice is to go out in the field and work and do my plein air studies, and so these trips and residencies, and I just did one last year at the Tweed Regional Gallery, which was just wonderful, because I'd never been to that part of our country, and that's a different landscape to what I'm painting here in the Adelaide Hills. And I'm experiencing different palette and prehistoric rainforest that we don't get in South Australia. And so the places that I go to, the year before that, my last big collection, which was based on a trip to the Central Desert, where I went out to the East Macdonald Ranges with a bunch of wonderful Australian artists, and I got to experience that magical, spiritual part of our land I've never been to as well, and really immersing myself in place and living it for 8 days, morning, afternoon, evening, feeling the different landscape, the history of place, the people that have been there before us. The palette is always different everywhere I go. The textures are different. My work is obviously very tactile and about texture in the landscape, and there are so many different textures in our landscape: water, bark from the tree, the foliage, the land, the grasses underneath. The rock face in the Central Desert just blew me away. I had never experienced rock faces that almost just swallowed me up. I'd never experienced that. And I'm seeing parts of our country, and I have done some trips overseas as well. I did a month in Tuscany in 2018, which was just an absolute dream come true. It's sort of a bit of a pinch me moment. I'm not sure I'll ever do it like that again, but
and that collection was sublime.
Thank you. That was just like living the dream, going and learning from another teacher and really experiencing a different country and culture. But these trips allow me to discover different parts of our country, which is important to me. And I like to respond and record what I'm feeling and seeing when I'm out there. So the plein air experience is allowing me to really feel that. And the trips don't happen just by chance. I think I mentioned this in my opening speech, and that, I've got a family and I run an art school. Life goes on, and I have to really plan for those trips. So I never take that for granted. I never take the fact that I can go away for a week and completely switch off. But I really do switch off. It might take me a while to feel the place. I do a lot of walking. I walk and walk and walk, and I might do a day of walking around that particular area just to feel where it may not jump out at me initially. I might take me a while to sort of connect, and I may not, let's face it, but I generally do find something that I want to paint wherever I am, and then I usually come home with a stack of lovely little plein air studies that then are the next collection of paintings so that grows out of those trips. So the trips are just a massive part of what I do.
So for people like me, the plein air experience, which is an overwhelming kind of concept as I understand it for many artists, but explain how you approach that and what is your method and how does it inform the work?
Yeah, it's pretty challenging actually, and I really only started doing plein air work maybe only 10 years ago. But when you're sitting in the landscape and you've got 360-degree views around you, there's nothing to say that it's been contained within a frame and that's what you're going to paint. So I need to make a decision with all the visual information around me, what I'm going to put within my 4 borders of a framework. And so composition is something I'm always thinking about, and I talk about it a lot with my students. I'm a bit obsessed with composition. And so when I'm out there, I need to really think about what it is I want to capture and also what I want to leave out, because there's so much, and I don't want to paint it all, and I'm working in a situation where there might be a very sudden change of light, a gust of wind, and we've I've lost canvases in paddocks before, and it's not the comfort of your studio, so it's really challenging. Flies and heat, and you're in the elements, which is a wonderful part of it, but it's really challenging. So you're working faster, and you're working at capturing that immediacy of how you see it, or what you see, or what do I want to record about being out here. And if you look at this collection, you'll notice it's not like I'm looking at a photograph and I'm mimicking, copying everything from a photograph. And I don't work like that. I do take lots of photos, and I do reference photos, but the difference between being in the landscape is that I'm dealing with these sort of elements that you can't touch. I'm dealing with light, atmosphere, and space. And so I'm feeling that. That's really hard to paint because it's an elusive thing. Whereas if I'm working from a photograph, it's a two-dimensional piece of paper, and I'm dealing with, I can copy shape and colour and values, but there's not atmosphere or even light, because I can see light in a photograph, but I can't experience it. And so when I'm in the middle of the bush or by the dam or up on the top of a hill or wherever I am, I'm able to feel those things that you can't touch. And that's the biggest difference, if that makes sense to you guys. That's how I probably would describe it, as recording from something that's flat to being actually in that place.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because your works from all of your collections translate a sense of mood and momentum, feeling, and we'll talk about the collection in a minute, but almost all of them I want to walk into. Mm-hmm. So is that really where that comes from?
Yeah, I think so. It's probably how I'm translating maybe how I was feeling when I was there, and I can talk about specific works later if you like, but when someone stands in front of one of my works, this one in particular has been a real talking point when people are over the other side of the gallery and the comment is, I just want to walk into that forest, or I feel like I'm there. That's just such a lovely compliment to me. If I can engage a viewer to feel like they want to walk into one of my paintings, that's one of my biggest intentions as a painter. To connect with a viewer, to give them that feeling is the best. I love that.
So we are going to talk about the collection in a minute, but first of all, I want to ask you just a question really about your everyday routine in your practice. Now, we know it involves a lot of dancing and a very eclectic range of music choices. But aside from that, and maybe you can even talk about that too in answering this question, because is there an energy thing in that? But what is your processes in your daily practice? Is there a routine?
Yeah, there's very much routine. I like routine. I think the teacher in me, I'm very organised, and I work on a 9 to 3 day almost because of my teaching life, I think. And also because I've got kids and I have to put down the palette knife and go and pick them up, So that's just life. But I'm not good at night. I'm a baby. I go to bed really early, and I get up early. I'd rather be up early and into bed early. My routine usually involves dropping my daughter to school, and then I go for a hike. And I'm lucky enough to live at the base of the Belair Hills, so I can walk only 15 minutes, and I'm in the thick of the bush. And you wouldn't believe it, because the city's only there. And so I feel like I'm at the top of a hill, and I could be anywhere in the world, but I'm just on those outskirts of the city. So where I live, I feel grateful for, because I can do an hour's hike and be back in the studio by 9:30. And that walk up the hill, not only is it my physical exercise, and I've got my dogs exercised, but it's my mental health. It's clearing my head, it's fresh air, it's seeing the landscape, it's feeling the cold air in the morning, it's getting my heart racing, whatever, filling my lungs with, you know, it starts my day. And I do miss it when I can't do that. So I don't do that on a Thursday when I go and teach. And there's some students here, but that's okay. And but that's a part of my studio day. And also because I'm seeing the light in the morning, and I'm already thinking about making a painting, I suppose, or painting light, or whatever it is I'm doing. So it just sets me up for the day. And then I go in, and I might spend half an hour just scraping off my palette or laying out my colours. And I've got massive palettes because I work very big and thick and lots of paint. And my palette preparation might take me a good half an hour. And yeah, and because I mix a lot of colours, so I am a massive mixer. I don't own one tube of green paint, and no one believes me, but you can come and see.
Yeah.
I talk to my students about mixing their own colours all the time. So I'm looking around here, and there might be 20 different greens in the room, but I've made every single one of them with my primary colours, cool and warm. And that's a really big part of the process, is me sort of I might make a whole range of colours before I even started, because I sort of know what I think I might want to do. And so I've got some mixed colours on my palette. So all of that sort of stuff is setting me up for maybe what I want to do. If I know I've already got a painting on the go, I know sort of what I'm going to need for that session. If I'm starting a new collection, I might just spend a day not even painting, and I might just be going through my drawings, looking at my little sketches, reading, looking at other art books in my studio, planning some of the work. If I'm doing a body of work like this, you've got to think about things like, well, how many do you think I might be making, and what scale are we going to go with? And, you know, I don't plan it down to the fine, like, the work evolves, and one painting actually feeds into the next, and think, oh, I loved the way I did that, I learned from that, I might do that again on a larger canvas. So some of that happens, that evolves as my collection builds. But there is planning. I have to plan it, and I'm planning 12 months in advance. And so some studio days I may not even paint, but the work involved is that preparation beforehand that's important. And then there's other days where I paint for 6 hours, and I haven't even looked up, and I think, oh shit, I better eat something, and then I have to go and pick up my daughter. You know, like, so I get lost when I'm in there, and my music is a big part of it that you mentioned, because my music changes throughout the day, and it's really weird. Like, I have painted with other people in group situations when I was at art school and so on. I've never done a shared studio space. I've always been lucky enough to find my own studio, whatever house I've lived in, all over the place, even in London on the kitchen table. I've always been able to find a space, or like in a rental, a little laundry outhouse. I've just made it my studio. So I've had my own space, because I think I'd talk too much, wouldn't I? I wouldn't get any work done. I actually wouldn't get any work done, you know, and the other artists would get really annoyed with me. So my music, I don't like painting in silence though. Mm-hmm. So my music is really inspiring. In the morning it's very, very quiet. It's sort of a more chilled out type music, a lot of orchestral music, and I've got some, you know, favourite just composers, contemporary composers with no lyrics and just music. Mm-hmm. And then by about 12:30 or so, I'm needing some fast stuff to just, and then the energy just kicks in, and I've got all sorts of playlists, and it gives me energy. And my paintings are very physical, and the process is very physical. I am really putting my entire body into it, and the big works especially. Palette knife work is a very physical act of making a painting. I don't sit down and paint. I like, you know, I couldn't even think about sitting down to paint. So some people sit down to paint, others stand, some work in silence, some have music. we're all different. It's wonderful. It makes us all, you know, how we all work. But the dancing, I just do automatically without thinking about it. And then I think during COVID, it just became a thing because it was like everyone was at home. I'm like, well, I'll just show them how nutty I really am. And it went a bit viral, you know. And it brought people joy. It's like, I don't care. I can make a fool of myself and dance around the studio. I have so much fun doing it. And then other people just enjoyed watching it. And if I can bring people joy and make them laugh or whatever, that's lovely. Other days I don't want to share anything and I lock myself away and I don't want to talk to anyone. You know, so each day varies, but I am quite disciplined in my practice.
The dancing is delightful and it always makes me smile, and you must not stop sharing that, because I think that is, we need more of that.
Thank you.
So let's talk about Chasing the Light, this incredible work that sits around us, which, as I understand from chatting to you yesterday, was 12 months in the making. Where do you start? So you say, okay, it's new collection time. How does it happen? What's your inspiration here? But also, how do you achieve this cohesion?
Yes, sometimes it's hard to know where I started and how, but if I'm going to travel to a place, I know, and I come home, that's the story. This is really special and personal because this is my backyard. So I've painted Adelaide Hills a lot, but I've never done an entire collection based on my hometown's beauty and hills, which I spend a lot of time in. So I drive up to the hills a lot, to Mount Lofty Gardens or places, and take my paints and paint. And I have the luxury being able to just chuck it in the back of the car and drive back to my studio because it's 15 minutes up the road. So I was doing that a lot last year, and my plein air studies, I've only just decided, I often don't show my plein air studies, by the way, they're sort of just for me, because I've put them on my wall at home, and they're my references. But I really wanted to show some of those this time because they are very important, beginning of the story. And so I just decided to frame a few of my favourites. So I think I was just doing a lot more Adelaide work, and I thought, you know what, it's about time I really show a beautiful body of work about my backyard. And it's not going to go interstate, and I really wanted to have it here. So that was my thinking. I haven't had a solo in Adelaide for 5 years. So it was really very special that I wanted to tell the story of my place. And then, so I do lots of plein air work, and then I've been fortunate enough to have friends that own beautiful properties in the hills. And they all invite me up to paint there, and I'm just so lucky that I have access to some of the most beautiful places. I do often get asked to look after the dog when they go away, and that's fine, because if you are going to go away for 4 days and let me paint in your property and live there and immerse myself there, I want a dog to keep me company, and you know how much I love dogs. It's fine, so they're those trips, the local trips, that really have inspired a lot of this work. A lot of this work in two different properties, and there's something you have to be really. I felt quite brave the first time I did it because I'm right up in the Ashton Hills in one of the little mini collections here, and my friend, really good friend, bought this property, and I was green with envy. I'm like, I wanted to do that, but you did it. And she's like, yeah, I don't know really how I've, what I've done, because I've got 8 acres to manage, and I don't know where to start. And I'm like, oh, I'll come and help. It's fine. I'll just pretend this is my place, and And we were joking, and then she said, oh, well, I said, oh, do you mind if I come up and paint one day? She goes, of course. She said, well, actually, we're going away, and that's sort of how that happened. So then I just started going back there, and being on your own for 4 days in a place that you don't really know. It was quite a liberating thing for me. It was very meditative and special, and I felt quite brave doing it. And I had the company of Tully, who was going to come today, but her mum couldn't bring her. But there's something about being in a place for that period of time, even if it is 3 days, and just really getting to know that place. So this show is about those experiences in the Adelaide Hills, not far up the road, but I felt like I was a long way away. And she said to me, I think you know my property better than I do, because I really, really did experience different parts of it. The dam I spend a lot of time down by the dam, there behind you, and the reflective light on the water was something I hadn't done a lot of, and so I'm really excited by the work of the reflections, and because I sat by that dam for hours and I got to know it really well, and it was a bit of a magical place. I feel like I'm in a fairy tale when I'm there. It's very mystical and magical. It's quite special, and there's ferns everywhere, and I'm just imagining that there's fairies and goblins living under the ferns. I went right back to being a child when I was there. I really did, and yes. I'm such an emotional mess here.
To make you cry.
Yeah. Oh well, there's nothing unusual about that. But I think it was that place was, I found quite special. So then I'd go back there, and I did that a few times. And the sunsets that I saw up there were just like, and the pink skies feature very heavily here. And I've exaggerated the light because that's what I do, and I exaggerate the colour. I'm not looking at a photo and recording every colour word for word, because I'm painting how I remember it or how I felt when I was there. But I was able to stay out until the pink sky came, because I brought all my pieces. I sort of carry it down, did lots of walking up and down the path, this path and that path, to get to the dam. And then because I decided I had enough information around me to make some paintings I wanted to make, I left everything at the dam, and I was working with my oil paints there, so not acrylics. I wanted to work with oils. So I had everything. I had a table and my easel and everything in the back of my car, and at night I just put a bit of a tarp over it in case it rained, but I was always there in a warmer time, and just go to bed once the sun went down. So I was able to be there at those times and capture it really quickly, take some photographs and experience it. Whereas when I'm just driving up to the hills for the day, I'm painting in the middle of the day, and you can see the difference with this work here to my right, that time of day where you get those lovely strong shadows, but it's maybe, that strong harsh midday light or whatever, versus when I was able to be there all day and night and morning, and the palette reflects that. I think that's a bit of a difference with some of the work, and frosty early morning. So it's about time and place and seasons, which is encompassing the light, really.
So texture is your middle name, but it feels for me, layman's eye, like the texture's represented differently here, or you've used it in different ways or different approaches.
Yeah.
Perhaps you could talk about that.
Okay. So, yes, early days I never used a palette knife to make paintings. I was always taught with a brush. I mean, I don't really know how much I was taught at art school. I think we just muddled our way through a bit. I've learnt it all ever since in my studio by just playing and making mistakes, and But I've always worked with a brush in the early part of my career, and then I actually discovered the palette knife by accident because I was in my early days, and I had a painting that I was doing. Actually, it was final year art school, I think, and I was working on something I was just fighting. I hated it, and I got a big metal ruler, and my paintings were still wet, and I just scraped the whole thing off. And I said, we'll start again, and I just kept doing this with the metal ruler, which is a hard implement. And I'm like, I really love the way that scraping mark is making, this sort of really interesting effect on my canvas. So then I started putting paint on with the ruler, just as you do, just whatever, credit card, plastic, you know, whatever. You can paint with anything, right? And so then I probably became braver with using different things to make a mark. And then probably 2005, when I had my New York show all about New York nighttime landscapes, I did a whole lot of urban landscapes before I really worked with the natural landscape. And that's when I did a combination of knife and brush, and to get that glowing night light, you know, from the neon signs on Broadway or wherever I was, to then some really strong whites. So I put the thin paint on first with glazing and brushes and blending and blurring, and then I whack on really heavy thick paint with my palette knife on top. And that's when I thought, oh, that's this nice combination. I can do both. There are no rules, you know. Do whatever you want. Then I became solely palette knife, and that's all I used. And I'm sort of known for that technique. So then when you get known for something, you think, I can't go back, you know, and we get locked in these things, which we shouldn't. And I don't want to be locked into anything. So interestingly, when I'm doing a painting or starting a painting, so I don't draw it up in pencil and measure and rule and grid. I don't do that. Even the really large works, I work with brushes and paint, and I sketch in with my brush and solvent and paint, and I might just start actually painting the whole thing pink usually, or orange or something. That's my first layer, all one colour, and then I'll sketch in on top of that, and I might just sketch where I think things are going to go. That's when I'm finding my composition and my layout, and that's really important. Placement of objects, and where's the horizon line going to be, and so on. And then I start bigger brushwork. So I build up like that with some brushes, and then I hit it hard with the palette knife. This show, I really was enjoying the soft brushwork in the early stages, and I thought, well, why can't I just leave those first layers exposed? Why do I need to hide them with thick palette knife work over the top? And again, that's me talking in my own head going, because that's what I do and I should, and you know, it's like, well, no. So this show took a bit longer because I had to show restraint. So I put some of the work away. I didn't look at it for months because I just wanted to leave those thin layers. And then I'd work on another few, and then when they were drying, I might bring them back out and go, yeah, I am going to leave. Like, there's a painting over there which is the very end of that wall, and you'll see that there's the pinky orange sky, and you can see dripping paint. Now, when you look up close later afterwards, you can wander around and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. But that very first layer is the sky. That's the very, I didn't really even know probably what I was going to paint on that. Big brush, solvent, so the paint's bleeding and running, and then I probably just put it out in the sun to dry. And I came back and then I started sketching up that composition, and I kept leaving the sky. I hate painting, I don't paint blue skies. I did here, so I never have a rule because you always break them. And then I just thought, yeah, I'm going to be brave and just leave that as it is. And then again, I didn't touch it, and we had lots of fights, me in that painting, because I had to do a lot of problem solving with that painting because it wasn't just what you see. I had to make some things up and whatever. And then I decided, so this show, there's a combination of thick and thin. And a lot of very ethereal, soft, atmospheric brushwork, which is layers of thin paint using mediums and building slowly. And I don't paint really slowly. I don't do anything slowly. Like I'm just an impatient nutbag. And I paint fast, I paint with energy, and I probably eat too quickly, and I walk too quickly, and I talk too quickly. That's just me. I really slowed down this show, and I made some decisions more carefully, and I took my time and I let them sit, and I'm really glad I did because I think it's really pushed me, and I think it's some of my strongest work.
And I think that what I love about what you've just described there is that it talks to your evolution and your
Well, I've sort of gone full
right,
circle.
right.
I feel like I've gone back to some of my old techniques.
Right, and progressing that way, because for me it was the real jump out, because I'm so used to seeing so much texture. But while we're just talking about that same work that you battled with and had a love-hate relationship for some time, this is the same work that Sarah said to me yesterday, and I was so frustrated that I just scraped the entire bottom, and I just kind of found myself going, oh. Can you just explain that? And then also you talked to me about what happened underneath when you did it.
Yeah, that one and the golden radiance, which are two, you know, as I said, they're the two that I really have to problem solve, but they're probably my two favourite pieces, because I did scrape them off a lot, and because I'd put something on, because I think I was trying to describe too much, because there was a lot going on by the dam. There were ferns and everything in front of my vision, like there was a lot more than you can see there, like, you know, reeds up to my face, and I'm sort of, you know, and I did say, well, I've got nothing to lose, and I hate it, so let's just get rid of it.
Right.
And you know, I tell my students, I always go back to my students, because this is where the teaching and the painting are literally, you know, two important aspects, because I learn from doing in the studio, and then I share with my students. And then I go back to my students and I say to them, you need to be brave, and you need to be able to scrape something off and not worry about it, because you can paint over it. And then I need to take that advice back to myself in the studio and say to myself, Sarah, fuck it, just get rid of it, because you hate it. And you can't look at the painting because you don't like it, so let's just get rid of it. Lots of construction.
There is construction next door. We're going to talk louder.
Yeah. So the thing about being an artist in your own studio and working on your own all day is you don't have anyone else to bounce off. So I'm lucky I've got beautiful, beautiful, beautiful artist friends. Oh, it's so annoying. Shush. So that's where I might ring a friend like Greta, who was here, who was meant to be here in this seat. And I have a really great art community, and we talk about that all the time. And I might say, I'm too close to this painting, can you come have a look at it? And can you come, and Greta will say, or Romany, or Min, or any of my mates, and they'll go, you just got to stop touching it, it's done.
Right.
You just put it away and just stop it. It might make us wrap up and do questions in a minute, but that is
going to go until the morning.
Just
5 minutes.
Yeah, it is a brave decision, but you have to be brave.
And there's some messages in there just for life in general, right? You don't like it, get rid of it.
Yeah. Yes.
I just think we can just take that, and also know when you're done, right?
Yeah, it's hard to know.
I think there's just some life lessons for everyone in that, just generally, even outside of art. And I've just got a couple more questions, and then we will throw to all of you to ask some questions. We must talk about the colour palette. The colour palette is sublime. The pinks are incredible. The crimson.
Everyone's talking about that colour.
Can you just quickly...
Can I have a wine?
You may.
Yeah.
But can you just quickly just talk about that? The choices, how do you make those choices? Where does it come from? Just really quickly about colour.
Yeah. So I've always painted colour maybe a little bit differently, or seen colour a little bit differently. Bit of a colourist. I love to make all my colours, as I said. The pinks, I don't make the pinks because you can't make that pink with my primary reds, cool or warm. So I am buying those sort of man-made, manufactured pinks, and I've loved working with them. The colour really obviously is reflective of time of day, and you can see, and the seasons, obviously autumn is my favourite season, and it's pretty it's heavily featured here because I'm always up in the hills in autumn doing, you know, the plein air work. I think I've exaggerated maybe the colour to create a sense of feeling and warmth. I mean, and I think when the sun changes, it does create, like when you're looking at green grass or a paddock, when the sun's changing, it goes that golden colour. And so I don't necessarily want to paint something like, I know that we've got green trees and brown tree trunks and so on, but I'm not always following the rules, I suppose. And when I'm up, these trees are an oak. They are I know I knew I would forget that. It's a very short name. Will come to me. Pin oak. Yep. And the colour of that really deep crimson is just so rich, and that's a very rich palette. And so when I'm looking at a palette, each colour is going to have to bounce off the next. So I'm really looking at the whole story. And so if my crimsons, and I'm mixing different crimsons and different values of that to show the light and so on. And so if I'm making that as rich as it is, then the ground's going to be sort of supporting that. And so I'm probably, a little bit of exaggeration and lots of mixing and a few accidental mixing on the canvas. So you can see in some of the work, I'm just pushing my palette knife with wet paint and I'm blending it on the canvas. So I'm not necessarily making one pure colour and putting it on. And you can see that very much in the painting on over there. I've got a palette knife, it's 30 centimetre long blade. It's my big one that I do a lot of the big works with. And I might have, you know, yellow. I might have made a few different greens and have yellow, and then it might accidentally catch a bit of red. And I'm scraping. So you've got to remember, if you can hold that for me, the palette knife might be that long and that wide, the blade. So when I'm scraping, I'm not being that careful in my moment of dance. I'm just grabbing and I'm putting it on in a very intuitive way. So if you look at the one over there after we finished, you see the dragging marks of that knife, and there's about 10 different colours maybe, you know, maybe not 10, but you know, it's not one pure colour. And then I'm pushing that while it's wet on the canvas. So that is a part of the technique, and I don't often think about that. That's one of these moments where I came in and saw this work when it all arrived and went, I don't actually know how I did this, because a lot of it is very much in a sort of like a meditative state of making and doing and not thinking, which is really hard to describe, and it's hard to teach.
I was tempted to drink. Actually. And hard to teach.
It's really hard to teach. Everyone says, can you teach me how to do palette knife painting? And it's not as easy as it looks, and it's not easy for me to sometimes talk. How did I make every aspect of that painting? I can't even talk about that, really.
And as you've said before, it's also very physical,
very
heavier way to do it. So, okay, would it be fair at this point in time to say what's next?
You can definitely ask me.
Where do you go from here?
Okay, so next, after this, I'll fall in a heap for about 2 weeks, and you probably won't see me.
No dancing in the studio?
No. It's a really funny period of time after a show where no matter how successful, what's success in a show? Yes, I've sold a lot of the work, but you know what? Success isn't a show for me that's sold out. Success for me is a body of work that tells a story like this, a cohesive collection of a place that's special to me, that my audience have responded to, whether they purchase it or not. This is a success, whether I sell it or not, because I had an intention. I've told the story, and I'm really happy and proud of the work. Yeah.
I just love that.
Yeah. So when you do that, and that's your job, and you put it all on the wall, and then it might go, you just don't know what to do with yourself. It's the weirdest thing. I have to function. I have to run my household and be a mum and turn up, but it's really hard. And so I probably won't paint for 2 weeks. I just process. So that's the answer of what's next immediately. But my next collection is already there and brewing, and all of my plein air studies are on the wall.
Oh, wow.
Because I did a residency in October last year with my darling friend Sophie Perez, and we did the Nancy Fairfax residency at the Tweed Regional Gallery, and it was an incredible week of painting in a place I'd never been to. And that's the forests, the prehistoric rainforest, the waterfalls, the water holes that we sat in on a rock drawing and painting in the border of New South Wales, and then crossing the border because we hired a car, so we were able to go over to Currumbin in Queensland. So I'm in 2 states in the same day painting. Like, it was a dream. It was an absolute dream, and it was very different to this, and I cannot wait to start bigger works because I'm on a plane coming home, so they're all the little ones. Actually, I did do a few big ones back in so we had a studio space that we stayed in, and it was fantastic space and accommodation, the whole thing. And so we'd go out and paint for most of the day, or even half the day, and then come back to the studio. And so I did some bigger works there that I folded up and put in my case, and probably didn't survive them very well, but those works will inform my next show. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited and a little bit disappointed because some years ago we holidayed our families in Kangaroo Island, and I'm still waiting for that collection.
I know.
So
I have done a few.
Not this time round, is
no.
what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
But it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And it will be incredible.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think every time I go on a trip, I think, oh, there's my next show, and then I get.
She did say that.
I did a small body of work for that.
You did.
Yes.
You did.
But not a big solo on that show. And then I'm going hiking in Tasmania in October, so there's another show. So like I've got too much in my head. I have to slow down.
Sarah McDonald, you are a wife and a mother to 2 incredible human beings. They're delightful, and you're an incredible friend. And I know those things are so important to you and really come first and foremost in your life. But you're also an extraordinary artist, and I know that it is just so much more than a job for you. And the emotion and the passion and the articulation of the process, and it's drawn me in, it draws everybody in. This is an enormous success, a serious, massive congratulations. I am so proud of you. So many people are so proud of you.
Thank you.
So congratulations, and maybe we could now throw it over to some questions.
Thank you. Can I just thank my
We just
Thank you, Marnie, so much.
So the artists in the room where I didn't cover your technical questions, would anybody like to ask Sarah a question?
I've talked too much and covered it all.
When did you sell your first painting?
Oh.
And what was your first painting?
Such a good
great
question. Because I remember, of course I know, that's when I thought, oh, I can actually do this. Maybe someone might want to buy my work. I'll tell you, I've told this story on a podcast. So I was at my school, and I was in year 12, and lived in the art rooms, literally recess, lunch, and on the weekends. And there was a guy who was our groundsman, and he would always pop his head into the year 12 art room and say, what are you up to now, Sarah? And he always checked in, just checking, not checking me out, because someone asked me on a podcast, that sounds like he was a bit creepy. No, he was a lovely guy and really interested in art, and we all knew him, he was just a lovely person. And he came to the year 12 art show, and he'd seen, I did a very, very large urban landscape. I love urban landscapes as much as there you go, I might go back and do some urban landscapes and really throw everyone off course. But it was an urban landscape anyway, but it was a pastel drawing. It was a very large pastel drawing. And even back then, I remember the colour of it was was not a normal streetscape. Like, the buildings were all different. Like, it was when I think my teachers have something to do with the way I see colour, because they taught me about colour and artists' influence, like Matisse. We learnt about Matisse. You know, he massive big part of my art education, art history, and so on. And he came to the art show, and nothing was for sale because it's just a Year 12 art show. But afterwards, he spoke to me and he said, "I'd really, really love to buy that piece." And my sister's here, so you might need to. So we've got the original of that. That was the big one that was in the kitchen. The big, the men walking down the street.
Oh, yes.
So I don't think I gave him the original because it was my Year 12 art piece, and I think we've got it still somewhere. But I said, I'll do something similar for you. And it was my first commission.
Oh.
And it was really lovely.
Well, let's pray you've still got it.
Yeah.
That's
Who knows?
awesome.
And my first ever solo exhibition, this is funny, this was when I finished art school, and I was heading over to London, and I'm like, I've got all this work from art school and everything. I wanted to go to London and have a bit of pocket money, spending money. Well, I was going to live there, I needed some money. And I had a job lined up teaching, but I said to my parents, I want to just show my work before I go. I've got all this work, and I won't bore you with, I went to see this, what do you call those people that tell you?
Clairvoyant.
Clairvoyant.
Oh,
Yeah, I did. Psychic. I did, and she's like, I just think you should do an exhibition. You don't need to. Anyway, I had it in my mum and dad's garden. I hung it all over the house, everywhere in the garden, outside. I borrowed every easel from every friend I knew, and everyone I knew came, mum and dad's friends and everyone, and I sold everything. And it was from $50 to I think my most expensive piece was $300. And you know what? Like, it was like, yeah, I then really believed, I'm going to do this.
Would have been all cash too.
Like checks. But that was that, and that's a really important show. It wasn't in a gallery, but it doesn't matter. And that was the beginning of my belief that, yeah, actually, this is just what I want to do. Yeah.
Right. Any other questions?
Oh,
Yes.
Do you find with each collection that you're trying to push the boundaries of what you know in the technique, so you're not just kind of repeating?
yes.
Discover new ways of doing it?
Yeah. I think I've got a lot of technique from just having done it for so long. But as I said, with this show, with this thick and thin, they're not new techniques to me. And in fact, the glazing is one of the oldest techniques in art history, and I've been doing it. But I suppose in the combinations of the techniques are a bit different, which is why I'm pushing myself in that way. My palette knife technique is sort of just now an extension of my hand, and it's just something that I do naturally, and but I'm not necessarily learning new techniques, because I do a lot of technique and I teach a lot of technique and I know a lot of technique, but I think the combinations of the technique is where I'm pushing. Yeah.
How do you know when to stop?
I was about to ask the same.
Oh, wait. Yeah.
That's the big question.
So the question was, how do I know when to stop? That's hard, and often it's my gut feeling, or putting it away for 3 months and not looking at a work, which I did a lot in this show, and just sitting with it for a while, and then going back with some fresh eyes and looking at it again, and then maybe my husband, who's actually a really clever designer and drawer himself, and a very good eye might come in and say, yeah, I think you just need to walk away. I don't think you need to do any more. Or he'll say, because he's an architect, so he's got everything perspective. He's like, actually, that doesn't quite look like it's right there. And I'm like, okay, go away now. Because he's often right. But I might ask a friend, like a colleague, another artist friend of mine, and say, I think I'm finished. Can you just come and have a look at it? What do you think? And they will often say, yeah, I think I don't, there's nothing more you need to do on that painting. But I think the real answer is my gut feeling is when I just don't think there's any more I could do. But then there's paintings that really annoy me, and I know it annoys me, but I don't know why. So I put it away and I bring it back and I go, oh, I know exactly what I need to do now, and I might just add a tree that didn't exist. But as soon as I add that tree and I feel like there's a compositional balance, my gut goes, oh, that feels better. And it literally, I trust that feeling, and I know, and I'm like, that's fit. And that happened with that painting there.
Yeah.
That tree didn't exist in that painting, that middle one. The one in the third, on the axis of the third there, I had to put that there. It needed to be there. And as soon as I put it in, I knew it was done.
I love that story. And now when you look at it, knowing that, you can't ever imagine it not being there.
Yeah, just needed to be there. So that's problem solving. I'm always problem solving. Because how do you make up a tree? How do you make up the scale and proportion of those two trees compared to that one? So that's the part of the job that's, that takes time and practice and years of doing it and knowing how to do it. But also that's just being some decision making. We're constantly making creative decisions. And that's, at the end of the day, I'm not, that's a different sort of tiring. I paint for 6 hours and I'm physically and mentally done. It's a lot. I'm not complaining because I love it, but some people don't understand that side of my job.
Or the mental component.
The mental component of our job is huge.
And are you standing?
Yes, I never sit down when I paint. I can't. I literally can't. I do. If I sit down with a student who's sitting down to demonstrate something, I can sit down and show them something that they might be working on, because that's what they're doing and they're sitting and it's smaller. But I have never sat down to paint. I don't know what I'd do with myself. I'd go mental. I have to stand up. Yes, Amy.
What about all the other more boring stuff? Things like getting your videos onto social media, deciding what to put on social media, how many times you post on social media, keeping your website up to date, all of that. Do you outsource all that stuff?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the question's about all the behind the scenes stuff about our jobs as artists, which is your social media, your website, your marketing. It's a really big part of our job, and some artists can do it and enjoy it, and some artists don't want to do it and hate it. And I've always had a really good brain to be able to do both aspects of my business, and I've been able to market it and talk about it. And the fact is, I actually really like making the videos. They do take time. My social media does take time, but do I outsource it? No, because all the feedback I get from my beautiful followers, who then eventually meet me and say, I feel like I know you.
Yeah.
And the reason they might say that is because there's no pretending. I am who I am. I'm very authentic and very true. My feed is not polished. I have a professional photographer maybe come and do a photo shoot for some media or press, but I do it all myself. It's not perfectly lit, it's just me. Yes, I'll talk about my walks up the hill because that's part of my painting practice. And if I outsource that, it wouldn't have the same personal touch, and so that does take time. And I might just sit down at night some days and just go, I can't be bothered, but I really have to post about that because there's this event coming up and I have to promote it. And I have had a lot of success through social media. That's how galleries have found me, and beautiful art collectors all over the country and overseas. So there's a real reach there that we wouldn't have without it. And the admin side of things, I write my own newsletter every quarter because I'm speaking from my heart and I'm talking about what it is that I do. And you know, sometimes I did have a little bit of help at some stage, and I just, the amount of time that I had to give to talk to that person and navigate how they were going to write it, it was like, why don't I write it myself? So I do all my own copy, I do all my admin, so it's a lot. So I might spend a whole day on admin a week, and at night, you don't ever stop working when it's your own business, and I run 2 businesses and a family. But you know, that's my choice. I'm not complaining about it, but it's a really good question because I do know a lot of people that do outsource that now because they just want to be at the easel. I'm at the easel and I can make my work, but I also can manage my time well enough to be able to do the rest. Yeah.
How much joy does the work of your students give you?
Oh, huge amounts. Huge amounts. I've got a couple here in the room. The fact that I can teach someone that walks into my art school and says, I'm so scared, I've never done this before, I can't even draw a stick figure, which is what everyone tells me. And then to be able to see what they produce, like your lovely John here, it's just so rewarding because it means that I'm able to communicate what I do and break it down and give an instruction and teach someone how to do something from nothing. And it can be learnt, technique can be learnt, I can teach technique, you need to practice. And yes, there are students with a very natural ability that walk in and I go, oh, you've got this, and I know straight away. And I can teach you, and when I see the results, it's just so rewarding. And look, I'm going to say that there are days and nights and where I'm exhausted a lot of the time, especially coming to the night class, and I've got 2 of my gorgeous night students, only 2 of you here. And I know Carl said to me, you don't need to do this anymore. You know, how do you find all the energy? I'm like, because you guys give me energy. I get energy back from my students. And even though I whinge and complain when my family are putting on Ugg boots in winter and I'm going out to work, as soon as I get there, I'm okay. Yeah, it's a very rewarding job.
Well, please stay. Oh,
Was there another question?
Oh, no. Thank you so much again for joining us. Please stay and enjoy the gallery and the works, and specifically take another look at some of those paintings that Sarah has described today. Refresh your glasses, have another drink, and thank you, Sarah, for sharing with us again today.
Going around at the moment, and I had a few sickies, but thanks for turning up and listening to this today, and I hope that you found that interesting.
Well, thank you.
And Mark, unbelievable.
Sally.